All right, so the TikTok ban. This is something that I think we really need to dive into. It's hitting a lot of people pretty hard, especially if were one of the millions out there trying to make a living on TikTok or you had a business on there. But even if you were just, scrolling through those For You pages just casually, this is going to have an impact on everyone because we're going to see how this ban changes creators, businesses, and really just social media as a whole.
Yeah, it is kind of wild how quickly TikTok became such a big part of our lives. And I think, for a lot of people, it was just fun, silly videos, trends. But it really did become so much more than that. Like people were building entire careers on TikTok businesses, using it in ways they never had before to reach customers. It was a whole new thing, a whole ecosystem. And then, boom, it's gone.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Today, we're trying to really figure out what happens next, What happens to all those creators who are actually making a living on TikTok? Can they just move to another platform? And what about the businesses? Are they just stuck? What are they supposed to do?
Yeah, those are definitely some of the big questions that are out there right now. And it's not even just the practical stuff, right? Like,
Hmm.
okay, how do I find a new platform and rebuild my audience? There's also a real emotional element to all of this. You've got people who poured their heart and soul into building a following, creating content every single day, and then poof, just like that, it's gone.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, for a lot of these creators, it wasn't even just about the money, right? TikTok was a community, a place to be creative and connect with people, especially during those early pandemic days when everyone was so isolated.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's really one of the things that makes this band so different from um, I guess other platform changes we've seen in the past. It's not just about losing a platform. It's like
Yeah.
losing a part of your life, a place where you maybe felt accepted and connected in ways that you didn't elsewhere.
So, where do these creators go now? I feel like I'm seeing a lot of buzz about YouTube.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people are heading to YouTube, at least for now. And it makes sense in a lot of ways. YouTube's been around forever. They have a really solid system for creators to actually make money, AdSense and all that. Plus, they've got the option for longer videos too, which I think is appealing to a lot of creators who maybe want to branch out from those super short, TikTok style videos.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. But isn't YouTube also a lot more competitive? I mean, it's been around forever and there are already so many established creators on there. Is it really that easy to just kind of, jump ship and find that same level of success?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's definitely not going to be the same. It's a different game on YouTube. You can't just throw up some quick, viral style content and expect it to blow up. It's about storytelling, good editing, creating videos that people actually want to watch for more than, like 30 seconds.
So you're saying they can't just take their old TikToks, upload them to YouTube, and call it a day?
Nope, definitely not. You need a plan. YouTube has its own algorithm. It's
Mm.
got its own way of deciding which videos to show people, and you gotta learn the rules of the game if you want to be successful. But there's huge potential there too. YouTube Shorts is a direct competitor to TikTok, and they're putting a lot of resources behind it. So I think for creators who are willing to put in the work and figure out how things work on YouTube, it could be a good move.
Okay, so there's potential, but it's not a guarantee. What about those businesses that were, all in on TikTok? They can't just switch to making long YouTube videos, can they?
Yeah, they're in a different kind of pickle, for sure. I think the biggest loss for them is that organic reach that TikTok was so good at. You could post a video and boom, overnight it goes viral, reaches tons of people without spending a dime on, advertising.
Oh yeah, that's true. TikTok's algorithm was kind of magical, It could take even small accounts and just like boost them to the top.
It really was. And that's something that's going to be really hard to find on other platforms.
Yeah.
So yeah, those businesses that were relying on that free TikTok traffic, they're going to have to adapt. They're going to have to start thinking about paid advertising, which is a whole other beast.
Oh, so they're going to have to actually start spending money to reach the same people that they were getting for free on TikTok? That's rough.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's
Mm.
not just about spending money either. You got to be smart about it. You got to figure out, how to target those ads, write good ad copy, track your results. It's a whole new thing to learn.
And I'm guessing they need to learn it pretty quickly.
Yeah, if they want to stay in the game, they got to move fast. The good news is, platforms like YouTube and Instagram, they've got really good tools for advertising these days. They let you get super specific with who you're targeting,
Yeah.
based on demographics, interests, even behavior.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just like spraying your message out to everyone anymore. You got to be strategic and really target who you're trying to reach.
Exactly. You got to know who your audience is inside and out.
All right, so we talked about YouTube, which seems like the obvious choice for a lot of creators. But what about other platforms? Is anyone else, stepping up to try to fill the gap left by TikTok?
Well, Instagram's definitely making a move with Reels. They're pushing it hard. They've already got this massive user base. But it's just a different vibe. Instagram's all about like that perfect aesthetic. Everything's polished and pretty. It's hard to say if that same, kind of raw, authentic energy that made TikTok so special can really work on Instagram.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Instagram is all about, picture perfect moments, not so much those quick, spontaneous videos that TikTok was known for.
Right, exactly. But hey, I mean, we've been surprised before, haven't we? Social media is constantly changing, so maybe Instagram will find a way to adapt and capture a bit of that TikTok magic. Who knows?
Okay, so Instagram's one to watch. Are there any other platforms, any other contenders trying to, fill the void?
Well, there are definitely a bunch of smaller platforms popping up, some of them focusing on specific communities or interests.
Hmm.
It's like if TikTok was this huge, massive shopping mall of social media, these new apps are kind of like the little independent boutiques, each with its own, specific style and target audience.
That's an interesting way to put it. So are we heading towards like this fragmented social media world where there's not one giant platform, but instead, a bunch of smaller, specialized ones?
It's definitely possible. And I think, it could be a good thing. It could lead to more diversity, more creativity, more opportunities for creators and businesses to find their niche. But it also means things are going to get a lot more competitive. Everyone's fighting for a smaller slice of the pie now.
So a little bit of a mixed bag then. Exciting, but maybe a little chaotic too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a whole new world out there. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out in the end.
All right, so we got to buckle up, it sounds like. This TikTok ban is like, dropping a pebble in a pond. The ripples are going to be felt for a while.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
This is a big turning point, and we're just starting to see the impact.
Speaking of impact, we've talked about the practical side of things, creators losing their income, businesses scrambling to find new platforms. But I think we need to dive a little deeper into the human side of all of this. What about the emotional cost of this ban?
Yeah, you're right. That's something we definitely need to talk about more. It's not just about numbers and algorithms. It's about people and their lives.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about that. Let's talk about the emotional fallout of the TikTok ban.
Let's do it. For a lot of these creators, it's like having the rug pulled out from under them. And yeah, the income is a huge part of it, of course, but it's also the community that they build.
Yeah.
The creative outlet. For some people, TikTok, it was like their whole identity.
Right. Yeah. It's like I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. She had like a pretty decent following on TikTok. She was making these videos about sustainable living, and she built up this whole community around it. And she's just lost now. She told me it feels like starting over from scratch.
And in a way it is,
Yeah.
it's like they have to learn a whole new language, like how you connect with people on YouTube. It's just different from TikTok. The content, the algorithms, everything. It's a lot to wrap your head around. It can be
Uh-huh.
pretty discouraging, I bet.
So what advice would you know, give to these creators? Like, what are some practical things they can do to try to make that transition, to adapt to this new world without TikTok?
Well, I think the first thing is just remember that you're not alone in this. There are, literally millions of creators in the exact same boat. Everyone's figuring it out as they go. So reach out to other creators. Join some online communities, talk to people.
It's about finding that support system, I guess.
Right.
Knowing that you're not the only one going through it.
Exactly. Yeah, and when it comes to like actually doing something, I think the most important thing is to really understand the platform that you're moving to. You
Yeah.
can't just assume that what worked on TikTok is going to work on YouTube or Instagram.
So you're saying they can't just repurpose all their old stuff?
Well, maybe some of it. But you got to create new stuff too, content that's made for that specific platform.
Okay, so give me an example. Let's say you're a creator who is, doing those short, funny dance videos on TikTok. What do you do? How do you
Yeah.
take that to YouTube?
Okay, so yeah, you can definitely do YouTube Shorts, keep that same kind of style. But you might also want to think about like branching out and making some longer videos. maybe a behind-the-scenes look at, how you come up with the dances, or like a series where you're teaching people how to do them.
So it's about like adding some depth, I guess, more substance, turning it into more of a story.
Exactly. YouTube viewers, they're used to watching longer videos. You got to give them a reason to stick around.
Okay, and what about Instagram? Like how would you adapt those dance videos for Reels?
Well, Instagram, it's all about the visuals, right? So you want to make sure your reels look really good,
Hmm.
maybe invest in better lighting, do some more creative editing, maybe do some collabs with other creators to, make your reels stand out in the feed.
So it's all about knowing the platform, and playing to its strength.
Yeah, exactly. And you got to be patient too. It takes time to build a following on any platform. So don't get discouraged if, you don't have a million followers overnight. Just keep making good content, talk to your audience, and just be consistent.
Consistency is key. Got to show up, keep giving people a reason to come back.
Yeah, for sure. And don't be afraid to, experiment. Try different things, different styles, see what works.
Yeah, it's all about learning and adapting.
Exactly. And, while we're talking about creators, we can't forget about the businesses that got hit by this ban, too. They've got a whole other set of challenges. It's not just about losing a way to market their stuff.
Yeah, we talked about, how they're probably going to have to start paying for ads now, which is a big deal, especially if they were used to that free reach that TikTok gave them. But I think there's a deeper impact too, right? An emotional one.
Oh, absolutely. For a lot of these smaller businesses, especially those that were, just getting started or trying to get through the pandemic, TikTok it was a lifeline, honestly. It was a way to connect with customers to stay afloat.
And now it's gone.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that sense of loss that a lot of these business owners are feeling. They put so much work into building something on TikTok, and it was working. And then to have it just taken away, it's got to be rough.
It's like having to shut down a store that was doing really well.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. And it's not just the money either. It's the emotional toll, having to start over, find new customers,
Hmm.
figure out a whole new way of doing things. That's tough.
So what advice would you give to those businesses, the ones who are trying to figure out, what to do now?
Well, I think the first thing is just, acknowledge those feelings. If you're feeling sad, angry, confused, it's okay. Don't try to bottle it up.
It's like give yourself permission to grieve.
Right.
Something important was lost. Yeah.
Exactly. And then once you've kind of processed those feelings,
Right.
you can start thinking about the next steps. And I think one of the most important things is to remember why they were using TikTok in the first place.
Okay, I'm curious. What do you mean by that?
Well, TikTok, it worked because it let these businesses connect with customers in this really authentic way. It wasn't just about selling stuff. It was about, building relationships, telling your story, and making content that people actually wanted to watch.
So it was about building a connection.
Exactly. And that's something they can and should keep doing, even without TikTok. It might look different, they might need to use a different platform, but that core idea, that human connection, that's what matters.
Okay, so how do you do that on other platforms? Like, let's take YouTube again. We talked about how it's more about those longer videos, storytelling, all that. But how does a small business, use YouTube to build those connections, those authentic relationships with customers?
Well, they could do things like behind the scenes videos, show the people behind the brand, their story, their values, or make videos that teach people something, provide some value, or even live streams so they can interact with customers directly in real time.
So it's about using YouTube as a way to build those relationships, not just to, sell, sell, sell.
Exactly. And it's the same with Instagram, really. Use Reels to show off your brand's personality, give people a peek behind the curtain, use stories to be more personal, more, day to day. And your feed, it can be a way to showcase your products in a way that feels real and engaging, not just a bunch of ads.
So don't abandon those things that made TikTok work. Just, figure out how to make them work on a different platform.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I think that's really the biggest takeaway here. Platforms come and go, but the basics of good marketing, they don't really change. It's about relationships, providing value, and connecting with people,
Yeah.
like actually connecting with them.
And that's something any business can do, no matter what platform they're on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, besides just, moving to these existing platforms, there's also the question of what new platforms might come up. What's going to fill the void left by TikTok?
Right. Yeah. We were talking earlier about, maybe social media becoming more fragmented with all these smaller, more specialized apps popping up. What do you think about that? Could one of those, become the next TikTok?
Hmm. It's definitely possible, and I think it's something we're going to see more of, over the next few years.
So what would it take? Like, what are the key ingredients for success in this post TikTok world?
Okay, so a few things, I think. First of all, it's got to be easy to use, engaging. People need to enjoy using it. It's got to have a good design, a clear purpose, and content that people actually want to see.
So basically, it has to be fun and intuitive. People need to want to spend time there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not just about that. It needs a strong sense of community, too. It's got to be a place where people can connect with others who are into the same things, share their interests, like feel like they belong.
So not just about watching, it's about participating, creating.
Yeah, that's it. And that was, I think, a big part of what made TikTok so successful. It wasn't just an app. It was like a community, a place where people belonged. So any platform that wants to be the next TikTok, it's got to get that part right.
It's about the people, not just the technology.
Exactly. And I think that's something really important to keep in mind is technology keeps changing. As new platforms pop up, we can't lose sight of the human side of things.
Right. It's about using technology to connect, not to isolate ourselves.
Absolutely. And I think that's something we should all be aiming for, whether we're creating content or just, consuming it.
Okay, so we've talked about the emotional impact, the challenges for creators and businesses, and this idea of new platforms emerging. But let's zoom out a bit. Like, what does this ban mean for social media in general? Like the big picture.
That's a good question. And I think, honestly, we're just starting to figure that out.
What are you seeing? Like, what are some of the trends emerging in this new world without TikTok?
Well, one of the biggest things I'm seeing is this move towards decentralization. People are moving away from those big platforms like Facebook and Instagram, and they're going to these smaller niche platforms.
Okay, break that down for me. What does decentralization actually look like?
Well, instead of having a few big players controlling everything, we're going to see a lot more smaller platforms, each one catering to, a specific interest or community.
So it's like instead of having this one giant city, we're going to have a bunch of smaller towns, each with its own like personality and culture.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I think it's actually a good thing. More variety, more choice, more chances for people to find their people.
Yeah, I get that. But doesn't that also mean more echo chambers? Like if everyone's just hanging out with people who already agree with them, doesn't that make things even more divided?
Yeah, that's a valid concern. And it's something we need to be aware of. But I think there are ways to avoid that.
Mhm.
Like we can actively seek out different perspectives, follow people who challenge our views, have respectful conversations with people who disagree with us.
So it's about being intentional about what we see and who we interact with.
Exactly. And that's going to be even more important in this new decentralized world.
Okay, so decentralization is a big one. What else are you seeing out there?
Another big trend is this focus on authenticity and transparency. Like in the post-TikTok world, people are going to be even more careful about what they watch and who they support. They're looking for brands and creators who are, the real deal. They want genuine, they want transparency.
So, like, it's not enough to just have a good product anymore. You gotta, like, walk the walk, too.
Yeah, exactly. People want to know who you are, what you believe in, what you stand for. They want the real you, not some fake polished version.
So be vulnerable, be relatable, be, human.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing. It means brands and creators, they're going to have to be more thoughtful about how they present themselves, more real, more focused on building actual relationships with people.
So this whole TikTok ban, it's kind of like forcing us all to rethink our relationship with social media.
I think that's a good way to look at it. It's forcing us to ask some hard questions. Like what do we want from social media? How are we using it? What kind of impact do we want it to have on our lives?
And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's a chance to change things, make them better, create a better experience for ourselves and for everyone.
Couldn't agree more. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out, in the long run.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Buckle up.
So we've talked about this shift towards more, decentralized social media, lots of smaller platforms instead of just a few big ones. But is that actually good for creators and businesses, or does it just make things more complicated?
I think honestly it's kind of both. On the one hand, it definitely opens up more opportunities, you know? Like, if you've got a really specific niche, you can find a platform that's, like, perfect for you and your audience. You don't have to try to be everything to everyone anymore.
Yeah, it's like you can really find your people, the ones who really get what you're doing.
Exactly, yeah. And that can be really powerful. Like, you can build a really strong following or a real sense of community. But the flip side is things are also going to be more competitive.
Oh, how so?
Well, before, you were competing with everyone on, like, one or two big platforms, right? Now you're competing with everyone in your niche on a whole bunch of smaller platforms.
So it's kind of like the playing field is more level, but it's also more crowded. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good way to put it. And it means you got to be a lot more strategic about how you get your stuff out there, how you market yourself.
So any tips for creators and businesses who are trying to navigate this whole new world?
Well, I think the most important thing is to really, really understand your audience. Like, who are they? What do they care about? Where do they hang out online?
It's like you got to go beyond just, basic demographics, right?
Yeah.
You got to get into their heads, figure out their values, their lifestyle, all that.
Exactly. Once you've got a good handle on that, then you can start figuring out which platforms make the most sense for you and tailor your content for each one.
Be strategic, focus your energy where it matters most.
Yeah, exactly. And also build relationships. Like in this kind of world, it's more important than ever to connect with other people in your niche. Collaborate, cross-promote, support each other.
So it's like building a community almost, like a network of allies.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And it can be really helpful, not just for growing your audience, but also for, staying on top of trends and stuff, learning from each other.
Right. Okay. So we've talked about decentralization, niche platforms, all that, but I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, which is the emotional side of all this. Like, I think it's easy to get caught up in the business stuff, but we can't forget that there are real people who are, hurting right now.
Oh, absolutely. This ban, it's had a real impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
And it's something we need to talk about.
So what are some of the, the long-term effects we might see, like psychologically?
Well, one of the biggest things to think about is the impact on young people, especially those who grew up with TikTok. For a lot of them, it wasn't just an app. It was like their whole world, how they connected with their friends, how they expressed themselves,
Yeah, it was their social life, their creative outlet, their window to the world.
Exactly. And to have that suddenly taken away, it's got to be really, really tough.
It's like losing a part of yourself almost.
Yeah, in a way it is. And it's something we need to be really mindful of. We need to, make sure those young people have support, help them find healthy ways to connect and express themselves.
And it's not just young people either, right? I mean, there are creators of all ages who are feeling this.
Oh, for sure. And, this whole thing, it can manifest in different ways. Some people might feel anxious, depressed, even, like they're grieving. Others might feel isolated, lonely, like they've lost their purpose.
Yeah, it's like any big life change, I guess. It takes time to adjust.
Exactly. And it's important to be patient with ourselves and with each other.
So what can we do? Like, how can we support each other through this?
Well, I think the most important thing is to listen. Really listen to people. Let them know they're not alone in this. Validate their feelings.
Create a space where people can talk openly and honestly about what they're going through without feeling judged.
Yes, exactly. And don't be afraid to reach out to people. Check in on your friends, family, whoever. Offer support, Just be there for them.
It's about showing up for each other.
Yeah. And that's something we can all do, no matter who we are or what we do.
Well, I think it's safe to say that this TikTok ban has been a wake-up call for a lot of us. It's made us think about our relationship with social media, about the role of technology in our lives, and it's brought up some tough questions.
I agree. But I think it's also important to remember that, even though there are challenges, there are also opportunities. We can use this as a chance to create something better, something more diverse, more human.
A world where technology brings us together, not tears us apart.
Well said.
And to all of you listening out there, remember this. The future of social media, it's not set in stone. We all have a role to play in shaping it. So what will yours be?